Hey, horror fans, thanks for joining me for this review of Them, Just Them. Cast and crew information down below, and let's get to that IMDb plot here. A black family moves to an all white Los Angeles neighborhood where malevolent forces, next door and otherworldly, threaten to taunt, ravage, and destroy them. Alright, destroy them is maybe a little harsh. Um, but anyway, we're talking them as in the series um, that has recently come out on Amazon. I wanted to get to this earlier, but with the series, sometimes it's hard and it gets dragged on, and you're watching so many different things. Um, I believe it was 10 episodes or so, give or take, and close to an hour, give or take, each episode. Probably should have looked at the specifics, but it's in that neighborhood if I'm not getting it exact. Um, Again, this is on Amazon, and when you first kind of look at this, it looks, if you saw the trailers before this came out, it kind of looked like Us. Um, but it's a lot more extreme than that. And basically, because it entails a lot of racism in it, and basically it boils down to two different things that's going on here: the horror of racism, and the horror that we love in our horror movies and books and whatever horror that we enjoy. Um, those are two big things that are going on here. Um, about this that what they've put together here. Um, it says season one. I know that there was some controversy and a lot of talk about this because it was so racist. So I know that the intent was to do a season two. Whether they do one or not, I haven't heard whether that's really still going to happen or not. We'll see. As far as this review, before I go too much further, I'm just going to say that, as usual, I'll try to keep this as spoiler free as possible, especially as far as where the story is headed, and more towards where it kind of ends up. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the family here and their characters, and some of the horrors both between the racism and between the horror that they are subjected to here, just because I really want to talk about it, and also to do, I think, a valid review here and talk about it. I need to kind of touch on that, and that in turn might spoil a little something if you're not really sure, if you haven't seen a trailer or have no idea what is to come here. That might kind of spoil a little bit about what each character eventually is kind of going through, and certain things that happen to them. I'm, I don't like to kind of spoil things. That's not the intent. But again, in order for me to kind of have something, to really say and interesting to talk about, or at least it was of interest to me, and I just want to comment on it. I kind of have to give that away. I can't really avoid it. So that is your spoiler alert, your spoiler warning. But as far as story, I will try to keep that as guarded as possible, like I usually try to do. So before I kind of dive into the individual characters, let's kind of set the scene here and what's going on. This is the 1950s, obviously in America, and racism is still out there and strong and going. As you notice, they had said that they moved to Los Angeles. They moved to Compton. If you know about that these days, it's kind of weird to see a black family moving to a white neighborhood in Compton. That sounds funny, but I guess that's just the way it is during these times. And what happens is the father here has gotten a good job, and a particularly good job for a black man. And takes advantage of that. And even the person who hired him really hasn't told anybody that he's a black man. So obviously he's going to be a surprise when he gets to the office. Um, but that just kind of sets the stage there for the racism to come. The family moves into a nice, it's a nice simple neighborhood. Lots of families, lots of couples, and a lot of, obviously, the kids in the neighborhood obviously go to the local schools, um, where this couple also has two young daughters. One's of teenage age, and the other one is a younger girl, um, but she's not a baby. She's young enough to walk and talk and go to school as well. And they're gonna move into a house. Obviously, part of that is kind of set up with when he got the job there. Um, there's some other things going on there, inner workings there. They kind of say this house is yours and kind of guarantee it, but you can even see the racism in the contract that they have to sign. They kind of make it seem like maybe it's not, maybe it is. You don't really know. Um, there are other subplots that are going to happen throughout here. As kind of things pick up and get heated, obviously police are going to get called. You would expect that. You certainly see some cops that are ready to be all racist and whatever, but then you kind of see one cop that's kind of more grounded, and you're kind of wondering why and whatever. So you're going to kind of see some other things kind of happen with some of these other, maybe not so important characters. And it is a little bit odd. I'm gonna say that I think I followed the story pretty decently, but there are things in it that maybe didn't make total sense, or maybe I missed along the way, or maybe just watching it at different times. But there are some sub stories that seemed a little odd, and why they were there, and at the end of the day, I'm not really sure unless that plays into a season two, and that's assuming season two picks up, with this family, or if it's a thing, kind of like American Horror Story, where they just do another them. So they move into the neighborhood, and the woman next door, a white woman, and she, I guess, is going to lead the charge here, as far as being racist. um, as you watch this, the thing that's going to become clear is you're going to have the horrors of racism and the horror that we like, the horror that we watch in our movies and in our books and whatever it is, horror that you enjoy. You have two worlds of horror here, and then they're basically going to collide on and jump on top of this family here. So the horrors of racism is in a way, is going to start from this woman next door. She first and foremost is, along with a lot of the neighbors, want the black family out. The second they basically pull up, and maybe her husband doesn't care as much. He seems to be a little bit more involved in other things, or worried about other things. He doesn't kind of want to take up her charge, even though she kind of implores him to. But instead, she leans on some neighbors to kind of help her out. But you're also going to find out that she's maybe not all there herself. And then let's see. They're gonna the mom is obviously gonna be the one that's staying home, so she's gonna have a little bit of interactions with this woman across the street and some of the neighbors, and then I think the father gets kind of involved maybe a little bit later on with more of the neighbors and the back and forth and the racism and so forth. The father is obviously more preoccupied with work, at least in the early going, and kind of getting settled in, and I think one of the things they do here pretty well is they kind of make you want to root for the family in certain ways. You want to see, you feel bad for them being hit with this racism, and you want to see them kind of succeed there. Um, but the challenge from the racism point of view is pretty tough, obviously. Um, but then they're hammered by this horror. Um, and what I mean by that is the supernatural or the hauntings or whatever it is that's kind of happening to them. And it makes it that more difficult. And some of the time you're going to see kind of the real world kind of collide, and kind of blur the lines here, for them, which kind of doesn't really paint an even better picture for them in front of certain people. The wife is having her issues. Sometimes she'll be talking to somebody, you think that that's a normal conversation, and before you know it, it hits a point and it's no longer grounded in the real world. It's something else. She starts seeing things, or things that kind of set her off, and then that kind of spills into like neighbors seeing her, and different things happening. Um, you know, uh, and that doesn't help. You already have a bunch of neighbors who don't want you there, who hate you just because of your skin color, and then you kind of acting crazy on top of it, is not helping your cause. It's not like you're outside, giving to charity and trying to help the neighborhood. Instead, you're kind of looking like a mental issue there and a crazy person, and that is just not helping at all. Um, so with that, it is all of their fights individually and as a family to kind of overcome the racism and overcome their personal issues, with their hauntings and so forth. And they do it as a family a little bit, and they do it individually a little bit. Um, and obviously, their fight to stay there in the home and stay there in the neighborhood, and so forth, as this goes on. Um, there is a little bit more to it, um, as far as maybe why they're getting haunted to begin with. I'm going to kind of touch on that now as I kind of dive into these characters a little bit. So, if you're worried about the spoiler part, maybe this is where it might come as I kind of talk about these characters and what they face. I'll kind of start, with the father. He's obviously the head of this family. Even though I think the story, at least in the beginning, it kind of stems a lot from the mom. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of this has started with the mom. Um, but I'm going to start with the father here. And, he's really trying to be a father. He brought him to a new home. He's making, he thinks he's going to make some money now and provide for his family. He's got, the two girls. He's got his wife. So, you kind of see him, really trying to make this a family, trying to make this a fresh start. But then he goes to work, and like I said, nobody's really expecting a black man to get hired. So, when he kind of walks in, he's basically quickly ignored. The only one who's really going to pay attention to him is the person who hired him. And even the person above him, you find out later, above the boss, doesn't even really know that they've hired a black man until a certain point. So, he's very invisible. You see that away. You see people bump into him, and he's just not going to get acknowledged, except for when the boss calls him into the room and kind of is checking on him and his work and what's going on. As far as and that's kind of the start of the racism that's around him. Obviously, when he's back home later on, he faces some from the neighbors and so forth. But here his hauntings basically begin, because apparently he was in the war, and he's maybe got some trauma from that and some stress from that. It hasn't gone away, and that kind of kick starts it for him. Um, then it just becomes a little bit darker and darker for him. They kind of set the stage of having maybe some scary moments or some uh, moments where things pop up on him, and again, his line between reality and the hauntings or wherever that kind of takes him are going to get blurred, and later on he sees, and I apologize if I get this wrong, I think it's called blackface, I'm not sure. I know my wife, she looked it up when we were kind of watching because we were kind of curious, but I don't remember what we had read about it. But basically it's this person that's haunting him, and basically whether they're white or black, I'm not really sure, but they do have a painted black face on. And he's a super creepy individual, and he's basically taunting him and kind of getting him to do things that maybe he shouldn't do, and again blurring those lines. And of course, the father's the only one who can kind of see him, and at times he's there and he's kind of talking to this individual, and obviously people are kind of looking his direction. It looks like he's just nuts. But this figure kind of comes when things are really coming to a head for him. You can maybe make an argument maybe that he kind of helps him in a way, but at the end of the day he probably does not. But it's definitely super creepy. The mom is kind of where the story starts as far as the scares. And like I said, I believe, at least the way I took the story, is that it's in her family of why these hauntings happen, and why it has come to their family. And like I said, I'm going to be trying to be spoiler free as far as the story, so I'm not going to dive too much into that. But they do they will kind of give you some background here, and really weird stuff. It gets really weird. And there's something else I wanted to say, but I think that kind of ruined part of the story here. So I just keep that aside. And it just mostly had to do with the order of the episodes. So there's one episode in particular that kind of covers some of the background, and it just seemed out of place. I wish they would have done it maybe in a different order. That's basically it. I'm not gonna say too much there. But yeah, she's also got her hauntings, and it kind of stretches. Sometimes it's different people she's talking to, and then it kind of blurs the line. Like she'll be having a conversation, and then based on what they're talking, maybe something will happen to that person that she's talking to, or somebody will come in the room that wasn't originally there, is there. It does, you do kind of have to pay attention, because you might not catch, if it's really happening or it's fake, or if it's a haunting or not. I think there are other times where it's a little more clear that she's not in her right mind, and she is clearly being in a haunted situation. She does come across one individual, and I guess that individual kind of brings in and ties in a little bit to why she's being haunted in the first place in her family. And I'm not gonna go there too much, because again, I think that would spoil it way too much. So I'll kind of avoid that person. But she's also, as she's sitting there, she's almost kind of trying to piece together, the black family that was there before, and trying to kind of find out a little bit about them and what happened to them. And then probably when I warn you of racism in here, there is some extreme racism in here, and if you're not comfortable watching something with a lot of racism in it, this might not be for you. Everybody has even as horror fans, everybody feels that they have that boundary. Like, I can watch this, and then it kind of, you might run into something that makes you really uncomfortable. And you know, I think we've all seen, stuff with racism in it. Um, you know, maybe even, a lot of us have lived it. Um, so, maybe based on your experience, this might be for you, might not. Just be forewarned that there's a lot of racism in this movie, in this series. Um, I won't give the entire scene away or the entire thing, but part of the backstory here, at least with hers or with their family, is that they did have, I guess, and I believe it's their first child, and this is when they lived in, I think it was North Carolina, and the father was away, or maybe it wasn't their first child. No, I don't. Now that I think about it, I don't. I don't think it was their first child. It might have been their last child. Um, and I think that's what it is. Sorry. Um, but the father is away, and the mom is home alone with the baby. And, they kind of do this in, I think, maybe two or three different parts. So, this is one of those things where they give you a little bit, and then they go away from it, and then they come back. And then I think they go away from it again, and then they show you the full event. But this is kind of what you think really sets her off, but then later, you kind of find out that maybe this is a family thing as well. Um, but she's home alone. She goes out on her porch. She's just kind of getting some air, and here comes this old white woman coming up the road there, and this old white woman kind of acting crazy, and she starts singing a song, and at first, they kind of have an exchange, and it seems friendly, but then it kind of turns south real quickly. You're gonna find out that this white woman is obviously racist and is not alone. um, she comes to the house and does I'll just call it a terrible, terrible act. A terrible, terrible act here. Um, I just have to say it. I'm not going to say exactly what happens, but let's say if you don't, well, you're not going to see the baby get hurt. The baby is going to get hurt. Let's just put it that way. It's one of these kind of things. You're not going to actually see it. But what is happening, what they do is just, it really doesn't matter what color the baby was. It's a terrible act to happen to a child, regardless. But throw the racism on top of it and what they're doing and how they're doing it. It is probably one of the most racist things I've seen in a series, in a show, in a movie, whatever. I'm not gonna, I don't know my history here of racist things I've seen. But it was shocking to watch this scene unfold. And if they don't have a season two, that might be one of the scenes that reasons why. It was just tough to watch. So basically, on top of everything else this family's going through, you have a loss of a child. That's part of it. And obviously the mom is traumatized by this event and by what happened, and she experienced it and she was in the room. So that's part of her experience and part of her hauntings, part of obviously the racism that she's been inflicted by, and something that kind of she has not gotten over even though they've moved. And you'll see that more a bigger thing happen later on towards the end, in relation to everything with that. The daughters, just to try to move a little bit quicker here. The youngest one, I forget the name she calls it, but she's insistent that there's something there with her, but she's a young girl. You think maybe it's an imaginary friend or whatever. That's kind of the way the mom plays it off. I think later on when the mom kind of realizes that maybe these hauntings and she's kind of more believing in these things, maybe she has a little more acceptance of the possibilities that her young daughter is seeing this thing. Again, there's a name for it. I don't remember the name, but they do bring it about, and they kind of make it really creepy and scary. If you're looking for the horror here, I think that the little girl's got a good one here. because it kind of hides in the shadows and kind of comes out. I don't know if I don't know if you want to call it a jump scare, um, but it is a pretty creepy thing, and it does lead to some good horror when we're talking about the little girl. Um, the teenage sister has something, and I'm debating whether I want to say it again. I have said about spoilers and something. Um, Basically, she goes to school, and obviously being the only black girl there, she's gonna basically experience a little bit of what the father does, being ignored, being invisible to a point, but also experience that kids are mean and so forth, and kind of get a little bit of that. In turn, her haunting or her thing is, if you want to call it a haunting, is that she in turn meets a young a white girl who's of similar age and maybe probably in her grade or whatever you want to call it. And at first, at first you're thinking, oh, well, this is the one girl that's going to befriend her and whatever, blah blah. But that really isn't the case. This girl doesn't exist. It's a figment of her imagination. Um, you know, Call it a haunting if you want. I'm not so sure I kind of mentioned that the young girl was maybe using her imagination, but I'm pretty sure that was a haunting. Um, this may not be a haunting, or it may. I mean, because of the history here of what is being painted. Um, but you're you're almost going to see her. You're going to see her befriend this girl, and kind of go off and hang around and kind of go in school and pretend that she's there in certain circumstances. In a really weird scene, she goes and she starts cheering, and she kind of feels that her white friend has invited her with their other friends there, and they're all as a squad cheering, and before you know it, it's really just her. um, and then and then it's just her and her friend, and not really anybody else. Um, and then and another fit of racism here and just craziness. And again, this might be a tad of a spoiler, so I apologize for saying this, but I feel obligated to mention it because it's just another crazy, bizarre scene. And you can tell that I'm a little shocked by the racism here and the racism the links that they go by. Um, she sees the can of paint and kind of decides that she's going to cover herself with white paint to kind of to make her white. You really feel sorry for her, to kind of go to that extreme and to feel that, that was a good idea, and in order to fit in, she had to basically become white and to paint herself white. Um, and then the horrors of that is then she kind of goes out and mixes with other classmates, and it's a truly awkward, it's a tough scene to watch, and you really feel for her, but obviously it's an awkward situation for the other white people around her, and just crazies. And so yeah, I mean, if you kind of wanted some examples of how racist this gets, I think I've laid it out. um, I'm obviously taking a little bit back from it. Um, you know, you know, I don't want to make a whole commentary on racism. We know all how bad it is, and the things that goes on in the world every day, and it's a shame that it still exists now, but it's out there, and maybe for some that want to kind of look to see where we are now and where it was, or you know, I, I didn't live in that time. I have no idea. I've read what I've read and blah blah. So, you know, I don't know, how true to the painting of the picture here that they do in the show is of the real life back then. I can't be the judge of that. But regardless, either way, again, the racism is real in this series. You're not gonna. There's nowhere to escape from it. It's there. Um, I think, when you look at the title, and the title is them, um, you can look at that in many different directions. Who is exactly them that they're talking about or referring to? Is it them, the family? Um, is it them, maybe the people that are the hauntings that are going on here? Or is it just a reference to them, like, again, the family or the people being racist? I think you can kind of take that at different angles. Um, and also maybe even assign a disrespect that they don't even get. I mean, if it is to the family, that they don't even get, a proper uh, name or title or whatever. It's just them. Maybe a little bit of disrespect. Um, so yeah, even the title alone is kind of interesting or racist, whatever, however you want to spin it and however you take it. Um, Again, this might be a show, that's going to be tough for some to watch, maybe not for some other people. Um, I know a lot of you are probably watching this wanting to know about the horror in it. I on the surface, it might, if you just look at it real quickly or watch a trailer, you're probably going to turn to Us and think of Us and the movie. And I think that this is a lot different. Yeah, there are some hauntings and creepiness in it that might seem similar at some points, but I think that this goes a lot further, and it's just there is horror in it. There is horror to be found in it. Besides the horror of racism in it, there are some creepy moments. There are some dark moments. Um, Jump scare wise, maybe here or there, and I don't think a whole lot. But then again, judging scariness is for each individual. Some people get scared over different things than others. But like I said, I think a lot with the little girl is good. And then there's some other moments. And like I said, there's things that I don't want to spoil scary wise. But I think at least they're going to give you moments with each individual family member that you can say that might be scary or might not, depending on where you're coming from, or at least creepy, to say the least. So yeah, I guess that's my long-winded talk on them. Um, I guess there's more that can be said and things, but then I'm spoiling even more. I probably did spoil a few things character-wise or what have them, but again, I apologize for that. But I just felt it needed to be said in order to give justice to what is happening here in this series and show and so forth. So with that, to give this a rating, I almost feel that it should be incomplete, because if they do a season 2, and again, I don't know what a season 2 would entail, whether it would continue this story or if they would be doing something completely different. I really don't know. I'm kind of leaning in the 2.5 to 3 pools of blood area, and I think I'm gonna kind of keep it in that vague area just because I don't know where this is going. You know, Again, I'm fascinated by the racism in it, and I'm not knocking it down because of the racism. I applaud them by going to such lengths and showing this, because we don't get to see that often, and we don't get movies and shows that kind of are willing to go to those lengths. And some people are obviously going to say it's too far, because there's always somebody that's going to say that they've gone too far. But I say certain things are important to show, and if you have to go to the extreme to make your point, go to the extreme to make your point. So I'm not penalizing it by that. Like I said, the story is a little bit confusing, and that could be just on me for watching it in different times. And like I said, I thought there was one episode which I thought was misplaced and should have been done in a different sequence to kind of maybe better explain things, at least in my opinion. So I think that there was maybe some a little bit of confusion, at least on my part, and maybe that's why I'm kind of another reason I'm kind of stuck in between. But I did like some of the horror they did, and I honestly did kind of expect a little bit of us in it. But I did like some of the horrors that they did. outside of the horror of racism. So yeah, I guess I'm going to kind of leave it in that vague area, and we'll see what happens in the future. So with that, horrorscoryreviews.blogspot.com as usual, and Twitter, Facebook down below as well. And I guess I will catch you on the next review, horror fans.